This meditation is an invitation to relax deeply, using only the breath. Breathing in through the nose, count to 6. And breathing out, exhaling again, count to 6. Again, breathe in slowly. And as you exhale this time, allow your relaxation to double as you become twice as relaxed, twice as calm. Take a slow, deep breath in, and every time you exhale, imagine that you go deeper and deeper into the center of your being, where there is complete stillness. Let the breath carry you there, breathing in slowly and exhaling as you double your relaxation and go deeper and deeper into the center of your being. Feeling calm, relaxed, and completely peaceful. Knowing that you can simply bring your attention to your breath and allow it to move slowly in and out whenever you need to relax, whenever you need to deepen your sense of calm and connection with your own center and soul.
Good day to all of you. Welcome to this meditation cafe. I'm actually saying good day because we have registration from 13 countries. And you know, in some places it's morning, it's afternoon, it's night. So I guess the best is to say good day. Yeah. And we actually going to host this session on transforming conflict. I think I was just thinking that, you know, when someone, even a baby, you know, when they learn to pick up something, if they are given an apple and an orange, and if they can only hold one, already conflict comes into the mind, which means there is a difference in a choice. So someone says that actually conflict is part of living. And if we know how to deal with them, we learn to stabilize ourselves to become peaceful. And sometimes takes us to greater heights. I was just reading an article where, you know, some of you footballers fan might know that this Jose Mourinho, who managed the Chelsea soccer club, yeah, and he actually studied from this conflict resolution book on Hostage on the Table, where, you know, it talks about it's very important to have the power of dialogue, power of resolving conflict and communication. And that's why he went on to manage 3 very high performance clubs in that way. So today we're actually very fortunate that Sister Christine Mahoney, or we affectionately call her Sister Chrissy, is going to share with us about transforming conflict. And with her experience of being a professional negotiator, mediator, and also retreat management, And also being a meditator for more than 35 years, she will give us a very wholesome or, holistic tools of transforming, resolving conflict, and then transforming them into a win-win situation. She lives in she lives in Melbourne, Australia. And so we are very fortunate to have her with us. And I would like to just at this point to remind you to have your pen and paper ready, because there will be some questions or reflection for you to do. And at the same time that, it will be very interactive. So keep it would be good if you could keep your videos on also, yeah? And if you have any question, put it into the chat box. Okay, so for now, I won't take up any more time, but let me introduce Sister Chrissy. Over to you, Sister Chrissy.
Hello, and welcome to Melbourne, Australia, from all your right across the world. I was thinking, what a vast world we live in. It's such a big world, and yet at times like this, we feel so connected and so united and part of a global family. So, and that's the way, ideally, the world should be, a non-violent, unified, harmonious place for us all to live in. And that's what we all aspire to being, and how we would like this world to be. So it starts with this form of connection. And I was also thinking how wonderful that all of you are interested in learning how to manage conflict and difficult behavior, and because I don't really believe that we can perhaps transform, resolve conflict. I believe we have to transform it. It's all around us, and no matter where we look, we see various forms of conflict in the world now. Sometimes it's global, sometimes it's inter-families, sometimes it's in friendship or at work. And, wherever there's more than two people, it seems as though there's some form of potential conflict. And I started studying this a long time ago. I think when I was perhaps maybe 5, when I first went to school. And I really didn't understand why children hurt each other so much, why they wanted to. I used to watch this child who had disabilities being bullied at school, and she was, she had her limitations, and she would cry, and I used to wonder why they're being so cruel to her, why they're hurting her. And it's been a lifelong question for me of how to find peace in the world. And when I first started looking to understand the need for peace in the world, and I remember thinking, what can I do? I had a mini crisis. I was doing some acting work in New York at one stage, and suddenly I felt the pain of humanity, and it was overwhelming, and I couldn't really go outside for a couple of days when I just absorbed this feeling of the pain and suffering of humanity and how we are with each other. And I thought, what can I do? How can I help? And the thought that came to me very strongly was, you really have to get your own act together. You have to learn how to strengthen yourself, Prissy. You have to learn how to manage yourself first, and then you have the privilege to go and help others. But it starts here with me. And I thought, well, how do I do this? And so that's when the thought came that I need to learn to meditate, because in that place of contemplation, I can reconnect with myself and get to know myself. And then that changes my relationship with others in the world. And it has over a long period of time. And so we're going to have an investigation together in the next couple of hours over this whole subject of conflict that we are we experience at different times in our life, starting perhaps in childhood, and different forms of it continue throughout our life. And I don't think it's something we can actually resolve in the next couple of hours, or to learn to transform it even in the next couple of hours. But what we can do is start to get some insight into it, and what might be some tools, some awareness, really. I think it starts with awareness, because you can do information sessions, which this is in a way, but the power is in knowledge, and knowledge is experience, and going out there and learning it and finding ways to develop skills. Because that's what I will be hoping to share with you, some at different points, that I help you to connect within yourself, your own inner wisdom, your own inner knowing, because that's what we have. We all have our own inner capacity to work with and resolve, to make things better. It's the capacity is, these skills are in us, but we need opportunities to open those up and to learn and to become very skilled at it. That's why I went in from an acting profession where people were always my greatest interest. I went and studied a master's degree in mediation and conflict resolution, and a lot of mindful mediation was also included in that, which is around self-awareness. For me, it was mostly because I had to try and understand family dynamics, and a situation that I had had since a child with a family member, and how could I make it better, because families are very hard to separate from. Even when you do physically, they're still with you. So I'll share that a little bit later with you. So I'm going to be, we're going to start looking at the first session on what is conflict, and I'll be asking you, what's the definition of conflict to you? So when I ask you something, you can either take a couple of minutes to write it down, so that you have it there for you to reflect back on afterwards. It's a powerful gift to yourself to articulate, to write down awareness, realizations, moments of wisdom that drop into your inner knowing. That's why it's good to record it if you can, even in a couple of words, so that you can refer back to it. And so I will be inviting you to do that. I'll be working with a PowerPoint. If I was in the room with you, I would have a very limited PowerPoint, because PowerPoints are not my major strength. I prefer, as an actor, to act out situations, and I would be doing role playing with you. I would be doing wonderful examples of human interaction and relationships, especially as Kim was saying around communication. But because we are here in this modern time that is with Zoom, it's a wonderful tool and a great gift to us all, because it brings us together across the world. But it's also necessary for us to be able to read, and you can take screenshots if you want of anything that I put up here. And so just bear with me if I get a little bit awkward with the PowerPoint. It's a bit of a conflict for me at times for this. So yeah, so it's we'll work through different stages of conflict. We'll be looking at inner conflict, which is a big one in all of us at different times in our life, and conflict with others, which is probably the one that we are most aware of. And there's an enormous amount of skills that can be developed in this area, but it does take practice, and we learn by our mistakes sometimes, and hopefully they are not the sort of mistakes that are permanent, or cause too much harm. But we all have to learn. And so that's the way it is with conflict. It's actually getting out and doing it, not just reading about it, not just finding information, because there is so much information on the internet about it. You can Zoom difficult conversations. You can Google difficult conversations. You can Google how to manage conflict at work, how to manage conflict in relationships, how to manage conflict in myself. There's unlimited amount of information out there. So it can become like an enormous sea that swamps us. And so what I suggest is you learn one or two at a time and you go out and practice it. So I will be sharing just this is a very basic. If there's any interest, then we can go into more advanced work later at another time and go into more detail and specific to your needs. So that's but today it's like a very basic information session, and it won't actually make you highly skilled at conflict, but it will give you some starting points, because without skills we become very emotional around conflict. So that's why skills are so important to learn, because otherwise the alternative is to become emotional, and that is what is the greatest enemy to conflict, are the emotions that we can trigger. So I invite you to put in anything that you want to share with me into the chat box. I'm sure you're all very experienced Zoomers and you all know how to put into the chat box. So some of your answers you might want to put in there. It can be anonymous, so that makes it easier for you than for me to asking you to share it personally. And I will have a look at the chat box and I will share with everyone some of your insights. I may not get a chance to read them all, and because this is my favorite topic and it's very easy for me to go too far. But if there's any questions, we can also have a question and answer at the very end. So if there's something that you would like to ask, you can just write it down, make a note, because otherwise we forget. Make a note on your paper, and when you get the chance at the end for question and answer, you can then, that's your opportunity. All right, that is different to the questions I ask you to find the answer for. Now, I'm trying really hard not to speak too fast, and for my Australian accent not to be too difficult for you to understand. So I have asked Kim if she can give me a little wave if I need to slow down. We did work on a little cough, but I think a wave is probably more immediate and not so easily misinterpreted. And so I'm going to bring up the first slide here, and what I want to ask you when you see this is, what do you think conflict actually is? So it's a curious thing. There's so many definitions of what actually conflict is, and according to who we are, where we live. Oh, this is a beautiful quote. Non-violence is the law of the human race and is infinitely greater than and superior to brute force, which, you know, we often see. So I'd like you to have a think about what does conflict actually mean? There's so many definitions. And because today we're looking more at conflict, not the global conflicts, the big international conflicts. We're actually looking more at personal conflict. And so what does it actually mean to you? And here we go. What was your definition of conflict? So you can just write down one or two words. one sentence even, what does conflict mean to you? And one or two words that say, how does conflict make you feel? I mean, for me, conflict makes me feel I panic, or I feel I feel vulnerable. I don't really like conflict very much at all. And so it has a big effect on me. So just write down a sentence on what's your definition of conflict. I can give you mine, but I'd like to hear what you think. So take a couple of minutes, and then when you've written that down, find one or two words that how conflict makes you feel. Sometimes we have to go into our memory to answer this. Maybe you don't often have conflict in your life. Maybe you're not aware there's conflict. But I think if you reflect back to the past, or maybe something is happening in your life at the moment, then you can articulate that. So we'll just take a couple of minutes, and I'll just find mine. Okay, so some of us have written in the chat box. Wow, it's a lot. So I won't be able to read it all, but some of you have got very great insight. So conflict means you're out of balance, or differences of opinion. Definitely, you know, differences of opinion are a really big trigger to conflict. Disagreements, absolutely. And what is the seed? Then it's interesting to ask ourselves, well, what is it the seed of a disagreement? I'm right and you're wrong. Your choices are bad and mine are better. You should listen to me. So that's a difference of opinion which leads to disagreements. And that inevitably leads to peacelessness, which has its own consequences. Someone else has said, yeah, another one on disagreements, not matching the ideas or thinking of two people or the other people, which is again relates to differences of opinion or disagreement. So, you know, not matching the thinking of the others. Negative, intense feeling. So that's the way conflict can make us feel, really intense. And it can create a negative feeling towards either the self or towards the other person. In a conflict with others, it's usually about them feeling really negative or uncomfortable or intense with them. So uncomfortable, we've got a few uncomfortables, more differences of misalignment with the self. This is a very good one. Misalignment, which means when you're in a line with yourself, it's kind of like a straight line. And when you're out of alignment, it's more like this. And then we're not connected to the self. And that is really, really challenging to deal with any conflict, because when we're misaligned with ourself, we can be traumatized and we can go into shock. And when there's a shock around trauma, because especially if it comes, when the conflict has come unexpectedly, whoa, it can suddenly throw us into a form of shock, which then has a knock-on effect of traumatizing. And we can hold that in our bodies. We can hold it in our attitude to others and to life. It can really affect me. I can have very short fuse, or what I'll talk about later is a trigger. So if I'm holding shock or a memory of something, I could actually react to someone and go, what do you mean? And they go, whoa, that was a bit over the top. That was a bit, and it's nothing to do with them. It's to do with a situation I had with someone a long time ago, but I've held it in myself. So that's where I think that's a very good a very good point about a misalignment with the self and others, and even out of alignment with the world stage. And that's where I found meditation, time for contemplation, a wonderful tool to realign the self, to bring the self back. As my hand gets all disappears there. Angry and hurt. Yes, definitely we feel angry and hurt. And how do we dissipate that? How do we get that out of our mind, out of our bodies, out of our heart when we feel my heart has even been broken? So someone else has said when there's a disagreement in any form. So this disagreement, I conflict makes me feel frustrated, but also, which is a very good point, it gets me thinking. That's if you are self-aware, you might start to go, what is my role in this conflict? What am I contributing to this conflict? Because the problem with conflict, which we'll talk about with others, is that it's usually about blaming. So this person here believes there's no right or wrong view, but more what angle, what perspective, what angle do I look at this conflict in? And I can change that. And someone has mentioned triggers that cause instability due to not really understanding. And triggers we're going to talk about later as well. Some people feel heavy when there's conflict. Some feel angry. And it makes you feel distressed. These are all negative emotions, aren't they? Makes me feel I feel restless and peaceless. I feel insecure and threatened because my survival sometimes feels threatened. Different life values. Some person said when I'm in conflict, I cry, the tears pour down my face and I feel sad and my heart is heavy. It's a beautiful description of the innocence that we sometimes are challenged with. Two sides opposing each other. I feel frustrated. Unfairness towards human to human and perception. So this word perception, how do I perceive the other? So it's a really interesting study to learn how does conflict make me feel. And sometimes what happens is that we can interpret conflict as a negative thing. But maybe some of us also have stories around something positive that came out of a conflict with someone, or where I spoke up and I addressed it, not in an aggressive way, not in a violent way, but I had to put my point of view across and I had to make a correction. So this is where conflict can also be a positive thing, which we will also talk about towards the end, the positivity around managing conflict in a more healthy way, a more skillful way, and transforming it into something much more healthy and into a form of wisdom. So it's it seems to be more and more around us, hearing it all the time. And they say after the lockdowns that we've all experienced, a lot of relationships broke up, a lot of marriages, courts were filled with divorce cases, separation. And so, yeah, we really didn't know how to be with ourselves, with the other. And one thing I've learned over time around conflict is you cannot change other people. You can only change yourself. It's not about managing someone. It's about how do I manage myself with them? And that's a big one. How do I manage myself with them? Not wanting them to be different, not wanting them to change, but how do I manage myself with them when they're difficult? And I practice. I actually practice And sometimes it's very, very difficult. It's when you have to breathe and and not not try and take it too personally, which is really, really difficult to do when you are when you're hurt, or you're confused, or you're angry. It's very, very hard to manage yourself. So the conflict is a very big subject. You could do a whole day workshop just on definitions of conflict. But now we're going to move into something that is very present in us all at different stages of our life. And it's and you will all, maybe you have experienced this, but it's inner conflict. And we forget it. It's actually called intrapsychic conflict in the legal term, or perhaps the psychological term, intrapsychic. So there's this inner conflict can cause enormous pain and confusion and contradictions in my life. So it's really asking myself, what is it? What is it in me when I know I am having inner conflict? What do you think it is? When do you know you're having some inner conflict? It's a very personal thing, but it can also create conflict with others, inner conflict. And it can be very painful and make you very private and very, sometimes a little reclusive when there's inner conflict happening in the self. And I'm sure all of you are self-aware enough. Maybe I'm overestimating, I don't know, because I would think I'm aware when I'm having inner conflict. But there are times when I don't even know that this is an issue for me, because we're so programmed since childhood, and we learn how to please others, or to feel safe in this world, or how to survive, so we can compromise and we can make choices that aren't necessarily good for us, but we think, well, it keeps the family happy, or it keeps me in my job at work, or it keeps me from getting into trouble, or it stops me getting into conflict with someone else. So I will take it on myself, and it can make me incredibly peaceless. And what also can happen when there's inner conflict going on is that I can be very reactive. And because it's an inner conflict, often people don't know why you are reacting like you are. Like, whoa. So if I'm carrying an inner conflict around that my values and the values that I grew up with in my family, in my culture, in my religion, when my values and what are important to me are challenged by, say, the workplace that I'm working in, or a group of friends, or a club that I go to, wherever there are other people, and they don't have the same values, they don't have the same respect for others that I do, but I can't say anything because it puts me at risk. It puts me, it challenges my place and with them. And so I keep quiet. And until ultimately I can actually get quite sick, or my personality starts to change. And so with values, I think, can often create a very, very deep inner conflict. And we try and conform. Maybe some of you have done 4 Faces of Women, that we try and conform, but ultimately it's not sustainable when our inner self is being suppressed. And so that's when we start to get angry or we start to rebel, and others go, whoa, where did this come from? Or hang on a minute, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. This is nothing. This is not what I meant. And then we start to get communication problems. We start getting attack and a reaction, and you know, we get reactive, and then they react, and suddenly it can get very big, just because at one point you've not been able to sustain the conflict, which is often around contradiction, a clash of, you know, the push and the pull of what my values are, what my culture is, what my religion is, what I believe is a good person, my should I or shouldn't I. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but there's this whole thing here in Australia around, should I be vaccinated or shouldn't I? And it creates an inner conflict with people at times. I don't want to be vaccinated, but my workplace, I don't know what it's like in your country, but in my workplace, they will say, well, you can't come into work, or you can't join the club. Your membership will have to be finished or on hold. You cannot come into this restaurant. So there's a lot of different situations that make it very difficult for me. And my inner self says, I don't want this. For whatever reason, I don't want it. But for me to live a life, for me to travel, for me to go and visit friends, they're asking me to have this, and it's creating such an inner conflict in me. It creates separation. And we hate being separated because we are naturally communal. That's our way as a human species, is that we are not really meant to be alone. We are like pack animals. And so it separates us. And then I have this inner conflict. And when I feel my own values are challenged, I can get very emotional and very angry. And until I adapt, or I find something in myself that I can articulate why this is important to me without it becoming aggressive or emotional. And that's very difficult. So I wonder if you have had any form of inner conflict in yourself. And I'd like you to think about, you know, you can share it in the chat room if you want, but I would like you to think about an inner conflict that you have experienced or are experiencing, or it's an ongoing challenge for you in your family, at work, in your community, in your culture, in your religion, that is still maybe sometimes stuck in the past. And how do I manage that? And so is there something that you have in you at the moment that is, you know, that is really challenging? So just have a moment of contemplation, a moment of going into yourself, and ask yourself, what is the most obvious inner conflict that you now carry or have carried for a long, long time? Or is it more recent? So I'll just pull up the PowerPoint again while you're having that moment to yourself of personal contemplation around inner conflict that makes you peaceless. So were you able to think of anything? Was there anything that you're not aware of, or maybe you became aware of, and that you suddenly go, wow, that is a challenge for me around my religion or around my culture? And this word respect, I think this is a very, this notion of respect is very, very important in how we manage ourselves within a conflict and conflict with others. around, because I have to respect my own needs. I have to respect my own values. I have to respect my influences and what are important to me. I have to respect that. And from that place, then I can start to perhaps communicate in a non-aggressive way, in a respectful way. When I am connected to what is important to me and I will not compromise on, I don't have to fight to defend that. I can actually find a non-violent way of communicating that. And so it's what's an experience? What is it? That situation that you already have referred back to? What was it? Is there anything else besides perhaps some of the things I've mentioned here around the word respect? Was there a situation that created an inner conflict with you that stemmed from, that its foundation was a lack of respect? Or was it more around values, or was it more around a cultural, something that is to do with my culture? And when I am in another culture or meet someone who is not from the same culture, there is a conflict in myself of how do I work with them? As an example of this, I've worked with a lot of bus drivers on how to manage difficult behavior and conflict. Thousands of bus drivers have trained in how to protect themselves from very angry, violent passengers and difficult passengers. And they said, because most of them are from another country, and they said, one of the biggest challenges is, for my culture, in my country, in my culture, we don't use the F word. And he said, and it's very, very important that we don't swear like this. But he said, people get onto the bus and they will swear, they will use the, oh, F this and F that, and in front of a woman, in front of children. And their language can actually trigger me, can actually make me feel, oh, I want to defend the people around that are being shocked by this language. And that is basically coming from a culture. Sometimes it's religion, but mostly it's a change in cultural values and family. So I wonder, is there anything new that came up for you around that? It's harder sometimes to own our inner conflict, because it's not about blaming so much. It's about owning it. It's about dealing with the heat inside myself that makes me blind to other possibilities and how things could be different. And it's a very, very powerful, foundation for conflict with others. So I wonder if you will, in the questions that I ask you along the way, if there will be one major conflict that you've experienced that lives with you, that you still continue to deal with as a sort of a form of a case study in a way for this this workshop. Sarah, a case study that you feel, especially around your inner conflict with others. And this is others can really trigger mostly my inner conflict. But my inner conflict can also be triggered by my surroundings. It can be environmental, like, should I use less water? Or why is the person I'm living with letting the tap run and I'm trying to save water? Or why are they using plastic when I'm trying not to use plastic? So that can also create my inner conflict around my conflict with others. So that's why sometimes we need, with inner conflict, we also need to speak to someone. Sometimes we cannot resolve our inner conflict alone. And the more we hold on to it, the more it can be, it can make us unwell. And we shut down more and we become small. So this is where we can develop skills, and we can go and learn, and we can develop ways of understanding. But I do think sometimes we need a trusted person to talk to about my inner conflict, and it makes it less intense and more it frees it up somehow, especially if we go and get some professional guidance around my inner conflict, or from like an elder that I trust, whether it's a family elder or in my spirituality, my religious path. There's a trusted person that I can go and speak to the problem, or a good friend, maybe it's a family member that, a brother or a sister, but the other person has to be someone that you trust. And that is the biggest challenge, because we have to, when we share our inner conflict, we have to feel that they are not passing judgment on me. And we naturally, as human beings, we're naturally judgmental, and it's a terrible thing to put on other people who are doing their best to change, or who are doing their best to share with you something that is really important to them. So if you're going to share something that is giving you some real pain or real emotion, like anger or frustration or sadness around the inner conflict that you carry, whatever its source is, be sure that you can trust this person, and test them out first with, whether it's a professional person you're paying, sort of test them to see whether or not you feel that they have the skill, the experience, the care, the heart, the interest in holding what it is that's creating this challenge in you. And because you don't, if we start sharing it with people that betray our trust, then, so this is where there's the wonderful power called the power to discern. And sometimes, those powers are so valuable, of how, do I need the power to face this situation? Do I need the power to face what the consequences are of me admitting that I have this confusion in me? Do I need to have, or do I need to discern or just discriminate where I share this and how I work through it? For myself, I because I'm quite private, I often work through it in personal contemplation, in meditation, in sharing it with a divine energy that we call God or Shiv Baba, or whatever you want to call it, whatever. It's just a name, but that energetic transfer of what is in what my challenge is, to sit with myself and my wise self in a situation of contemplation. And I ask my wiser self, the part of me that has known me for a long time, and I can be honest with, then I have that conversation first, or I write it. Inner conflict should also be written about in morning pages. And I should have put some of this up, but I'm also being spontaneous with you, because I do believe that writing, what's called a stream of consciousness. So you just keep writing. In the morning when you wake up, and you might have some meditation, or you might go for a walk, or whatever you do in the morning, before you do any of those things, it's a really good thing to just write without thinking too much. And it takes out of your consciousness and out of the vessel that you hold emotion and memories and resentments you can't even articulate to yourself, let alone to anyone else. It's very difficult to put a voice to, but when you write it, and you don't read it back, you just screw it up and throw it away. And there's a wonderful book called The Artist's Way, artist as in the artist's way, by Jane Cameron. And she talks about the morning pages. Now you can, I wish I could write this up here, but you can put into Google morning pages or writing morning pages, and you will get the instructions on how to do that. And I think that's a very valuable tool to work through your inner conflict, because it gets it out. And then you can decide, do I need to talk to someone about this? Or have I? That's why some people keep a journal. They write in a journal, and they write their what they did well in the day, what their strengths were, not just always the challenges, but what they're good at, what their strengths are. So I think writing is a very valuable tool to help relieve inner conflict. So now we're going to move into the inevitable one of conflict with others, which I started mentioning to you before, because they're all like this. They're not, you can't separate them. One conflict triggers off the other like this, like they all go one into the other. And so, it's just the human way. My inner conflict creates conflict with others. Conflict with the others creates a bigger conflict with more people and has consequences. So some of you were saying before about, differences of opinion, differences of, where you disagree with the other one. So I'd like to think of a conflict that you have had with someone. And if you haven't, you might have already come up with someone with the questions I've asked before. And it can be recently or in the past. And what was it in this conflict with this person that took you by surprise? What was that it came from nowhere, that you thought you knew this person, you thought you knew the relationship that you had with this person, and it just came from nowhere. Now, it might be happening now, it might have happened in the past, but what happened to you when it came from nowhere, from unexpected? So it's just a couple of minutes where you can look into your memory, in your memory bank, and remember when something came unexpected, when you thought you were on stable ground with someone, and then suddenly it changed. What happened? Is it something that's been happening because of the global situation? Is it something that happened because you changed? Is it something happened because they changed? So just have a couple of minutes again in your contemplation place. Because I want you to go back later on when we move on and use this particular situation as your case study. Okay, so you can put that in the chat room if you want to share a situation that took you by surprise, and it's really made it difficult to stay connected. Someone has said an interesting thing here. I always put everyone ahead of me, and in your personal life as well as in your professional life, I'd say. And it's not making everyone, not easy making everyone happy. And so this person here who shared this had to change himself by putting, my happiness and my well-being as a priority. But it's very difficult, especially when you have children. Now, this conflict that you might have as an ongoing one might be with a teenager. And this person says conflict with family is the most challenging, and especially with elderly parents or elderly people. Yeah, so there's a lovely person here that's put in Morning Pages by Julia Cameron in the chat room, so you can see that. And expectations create conflict as well. Expectations of the self, expectations from others as well. So conflict, this is just something that I have remembered from my days of study, that I always, and this is really worth Googling. Glassell is a European, he's a peacemaker, and he's a researcher into peace and also conflict. And it's really worth reading this. This is a more comprehensive one. There's basically, he says there are 9 stages of conflict. The 9th stage is often described as going into the abyss, which is like the darkness, which is like the never-ending darkness, is number 9. This is the one at the very bottom. So he talks about how conflict spirals down. So in number 1, he says discussion and arguments. It usually begins with some form of discussion, talking together, that creates an argument. But I think, in my understanding also of number 1, the first point, you see warning signs when there's going to be a conflict. You definitely get a feeling, or you definitely see a change in someone, or they're acting differently towards you. There are signals. There are points of difference in my relationship with myself, with them. And how do I acknowledge that? So it takes, number 1, I think, is perhaps because it's the beginning of a conflict or a potential conflict. It can actually stop the 1, 2, or 3, but especially 1 or 2. But number 1 is the most powerful, in order to take the signal and find a way of what we could say is putting a stop on it going any further. So that's where we might need to have some connection, like, can I have a cup of coffee with you? I need to have a talk to you about something. It's always good, if you're going to address the signals, it's always really good to not do it at home, in their place, in your place, but in a neutral environment. So number 1 should always be when you are going to address, and you can always talk about it from your point of view. Not that there are something called you statements, which we'll discuss later on in the communication, but that you statements are very much about blame. You've changed. You said this the other day, and that really upset me. It always has to be I statements. I'm feeling there's something happening between us. There's something changed, and I might be wrong. You may feel nothing, but I would like to just talk from my point of view, because I value our friendship, or I value my working relationship with you. So you keep putting in some form of respect. It's treating this first step with respect. And if there's not the respect, then they're going to feel you're blaming them or challenging them. And then it will go into point number 2, which is a debate. We start arguing more. We have it gets hotter. And then we start having separation, which is polarization, Polarization is basically separate. It is like from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth. There's the different poles of the earth. And so then it moves into, it can escalate more, and it starts, I feel I'm being abused, I'm being pushed. Steamrolling means being flattened. It's like a steamroller comes in on the earth where they have steam rollers, which are big machines that roll over. And then it creates malicious, it creates insult, wanting to hurt the other person. And then if it's a cultural thing especially, I feel I'm losing what's called losing face. I'm losing my reputation, and I have to protect my reputation because you are insulting me. And it starts to go, whoa, this is where blame can start to, because I have to defend myself. I have to go, hang on, this is number 5. Hold on a minute. You cannot speak to me like that. This is not right. I did not lie about that. I did not say that. And they will go into a defense, or I will find I am defending myself. And then it starts to really go into like a roller. It rolls into something much, much bigger. By the time we move into number 6, we're getting threats. You'll be fired, or I'm going to fire you, or you want to keep your job, you should keep your mouth shut. Or if you're going to speak to me like that, then this friendship is finished. Or if it's a teenage child, I'm moving out. I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to be. Or if it's a elderly person in your family, oh, it's better that I die. All right, don't worry, I'll be gone soon. You go, that's not what it's about. It can become manipulation. When someone is afraid of losing their place, of losing their position, of losing respect, they will attack, and they will go into threats. Number 6, the strategic threats. They will threaten you. Oh, well, I'll move out. I'll move out, Mum. I don't want to live here anymore anyway. You know, I'm really unhappy in this family and I'm moving out. Or it can be, you want to keep this job. You better toe the line. You want to keep this job? Well, you better, from now on, start behaving yourself. I'm not interested. I used to have a director. I worked with a very famous director in theatre. And I remember in the rehearsal room, I was playing a lead role, a big position in this production. And all the actors were in the rehearsal room at the time when we were practicing. And because I had a lead role, a very important part, I said to him, you know what I think we could do here? And he said to me, I'm not interested in what you think. You just shut up and do what I tell you. Now, it was so unexpected, it took me into shock. No one defended me. I was into straight of number 5 of losing my respect for my fellow actors. It was really, I felt so traumatized by it. I couldn't think. I lost myself. I became out of alignment with myself. And so the threats were that, I just knew that if I didn't listen to him, because he had so much power, it's very difficult when someone has power over you, positional power. They are your senior, or they consider themselves to be in charge of this project, or in charge of this place, or they have a positional power over you. And that can be very, very challenging to deal with. And so it's what someone said before about, well, I just want to make everyone happy, or I want to keep the peace. So then I shut down, and that just builds up inside me. And then so if we don't deal with the threats, it becomes a limited form of destruction. I start sabotaging the company. I start gossiping. I start trying to bring that person down. I start sabotage in a way. I try and find ways to help other people think that this person, I become destructive. And the attack can be really a lot about finding ways to hurt, finding ways to punish, finding ways to destroy. It is very, very destructive. By the time you get to sort of round 4, 5, especially by the time you get to number 8 or number 9, there is no talking. There is no discussion around what can we do here, no negotiation. It's gone too far. And by the time you get to number 9, total destruction, you have got your suicide bombers, or you've got the person at work that is creating real, that is taking money, or it's going to bring the organization down. It's a marriage that breaks down, and the attitude is, I will destroy you, I will destroy me, and I will destroy everything we have created, and I don't care. It's total destruction. It's violent. It's finished. And so what we could have done at the very beginning, up in number 1, is recognize that something is not right here. And we often feel it in our instinct, in our gut, in the stomach, we feel it, or we see changes starting to happen. And we really need to have the courage to face the situation and to find a way that I can help, or I can bring peace into this. To try inquiry is a very good one, but we also have to be a lot of respect, because number 9 is usually around, you have insulted me, you have insulted my family, you have insulted my religion, or you have insulted my culture, and I will kill you. And that's how people can react when they are emotionally unintelligent, or they are not developed as a human being. They can become very violent and aggressive. So this is really worth looking at. I would really recommend for you to understand conflict escalation. When I have a whiteboard, I always draw it as like a whirlwind, like a shh. And it can be very terrifying when you're in an argument or conflict and you're losing the ground from under your feet. If it's a marriage, it's very, very difficult when it's like, I don't know if it happens in your country, but here, number 9 can be murder, suicide of the whole family. And the wife and the children, they're all found, and the person then. And it's just total destruction and such a waste. So we really, as human beings walking this earth, have a responsibility to bring peace in the early stages. And sometimes it's just through a vibration and an attitude change of calming, a different attitude to my judgment of that person or that situation. So anyway, maybe later on there's something you would like to ask or share around this particular. I just have okay, so I'd be really happy to work with you with that, but it's a big topic, and too big for this short sort of session that we're having to, this time. So, okay, misunderstandings is a very, very big part of conflict with others. I thought you said, no, I didn't say that at all. And I thought you meant, though, that's not what I meant. And we don't clarify. This is the part of being number 1 in this here. It's a misunderstanding happens. We need to clarify misunderstandings. As soon as you don't understand something, ask. Or did you mean this? Is that what you meant? Just clarify a misunderstanding, otherwise it can build into something else. Now, triggers, I've mentioned this word a few times. I don't know how this translates into your language, but a trigger is something that happens. It happens and what was your trigger in this situation? When I asked you before about a conflict with someone that is perhaps recent, or if you haven't got one at the moment in the past, it's usually something triggered it. Sometimes it's what another person has said. And sometimes it's a tone of voice that someone can, so a tone of voice could be, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know if in your language you have a situation with a tone of voice, but a tone in my voice, I can be like, I can be saying the same thing, I'm so sorry. I can say it like, oh, I'm so sorry. Or I'm so sorry. All right, I'm sorry. And so the tone can trigger off someone like, what are you speaking to me like that? The voice is a very, very powerful tool, which we will talk about again in communication after this. So an attitude, someone might have a very careless attitude, a very lazy attitude, or a very dominant attitude. I'm boss, I'm here, I'm important, I'm more important than you. That can trigger something in me, like going, oh, come on, who do you think you are? Who do you, you think that I'm going to put up with this attitude? And someone else can be triggered by my attitude, often of superiority, or that I'm too, that I think I know more, or I have a disrespectful attitude for something around me. I don't know about you, but injustice can be a big trigger for me. Really, I hate to see someone not get a fair chance, someone who is made small when they are actually worth much more. Injustice and cruelty, I find cruelty hurting someone, as I was saying about the bully in the schoolyard. So a look someone gives you, someone can give you a look and you go, well, what did you look at me like that for? I mean, what was that about? And they go, what? What do you mean? What, I looked at you? Oh, I know you don't like my mother. What do you mean? I'm very polite to your mother. I could tell by the look in your eye. I could tell by the way you looked at the food when she put it in front of you. And that can be a trigger, because I love my mum and I think I know her cooking isn't great, but I want her to be respected. And you actually looked at this food and went, oh dear. And so that can be a trigger, a look. Someone tells a lie and they're getting away with the lie. So they have told a lie, an untruth, something false, and everyone believes them. And that can trigger in me all sorts of different inner conflict or conflict with others as I try to prove that it's not a lie, that it is a lie. And they're saying, no, it's not a lie, which again brings that conflict between each other of opinion. My values are insulted. That can be a huge trigger. That I have certain values of respect or of care of others, or I am very good at what I do. I am always on time. I am always prepared. And they are my values. And someone else doesn't respect that, or they don't have the same values, I feel really triggered by them. And then I have to watch, how do I address this? How do I communicate it? And no respect for my culture, my religion, or my family can be a very, very big trigger. So to know your triggers, most of us don't really know our trigger until it happens. And then it's a bit late, because we're into the fire, we're into the situation. So self-awareness, self-knowing is know your trigger. Sometimes it's called your button. Somebody pushes your button. I wonder what it is in your language, but a trigger is like on a gun. If you pull the trigger, you get an explosion. So if a gun, if you're unconscious of your triggers, you will always remain a victim and at risk with other people. So if you don't know your trigger, then you are really at risk, because other people will know your trigger. People that are close to you know what your trigger is. They will, it's a really interesting thing. Family members tend to know what your trigger is. people that have known you for a long time, they go, oh, Chrissy's always, that's Chrissy, you know, she always reacts like that. Chrissy she always laughs, or she always cries. That's Chrissy, you know, that's how she always reacts to, or she goes very, she has a lot of empathy or compassion for people in this situation. That's so I get known and I have a reputation for my trigger or my response. Perhaps another word is my response becomes very predictable. And so it's a really, so I would like you to take 2 minutes to write down 1 or 2 of your triggers. What really gets you going? What really flares you like, whoa, or what makes you suddenly sad, or what makes you suddenly like depressed where I can't do anything because this has happened. What is a trigger for you that can create inner conflict or conflict with others? So just take a couple of minutes to think about that and write it down. And perhaps if you'd like to put anything in the chat box, I can have a look. 1 or 2 triggers that make you, that affect you, make you vulnerable. It's really, really important. If you can't think of anything today, then it's really important that you have some personal conversation with yourself, even with those that you love. What do you think, Mike? What is it that you see in me that I tend to react to? And they go, oh, you always react when dinner's late. If dinner's late, it's a really big trigger for you because you like to eat at a certain time. Or if I play my music too loud, you always get upset. So I need to know, there's simple things, but it might be something more for you that is really, if you don't know what triggers you, you will be shocked, you will be vulnerable, and you will be caught by a situation that you might make a really big mistake in how you choose to deal with it. Or you will blame others. And there's no wisdom in blame. There's no relationship in blame. I have to have a conversation with myself. So this is something I created when I'm in a room with a workshop on this. It's something I tried to articulate that helped me understand this impact and this react. No, normally something impacts us and it does this. We react. I'm impacted by it and I immediately react. I'm impacted and I immediately react. Now, imagine if we could put the pause button on that situation that is really upset me and is really difficult. Imagine if I could put the pause button on. And then I could choose. My head's in the way, but this is where I'm habits of reacting. This is what I'm known for. But if I can pause, and once somebody touches one of my triggers over there in the left side, the little round circles, which are triggers, which are vulnerable holes in my person, in who I am, that makes me weak, that weakens me when I am impacted by a tone of voice or something that is really an insult or a lack of respect. How do I react? Now, there are people who've reacted like a habit. I always react like this. What we're being asked to is change how I react, is to change my response to a stimulus. But how do I do that? It's okay. We go, okay, you need to change how you react. But how? I believe that there's a middle ground, which is this buffer zone. This is a circuit breaker. It's a sort of a spongy kind of, I'm just trying to find a neutral word. It's something that you can create as a place of peace where you can choose to how you want to react to this situation or this impact. So choose how I want to react. Take the power of choice and not be a victim. So I ask you, what do you think? We'll just take a minute. What do you think you can do to stop reacting like this? What might be a buffer for you? What might change the direction of your reaction? What could you do there? So what is your buffer? Do you have one? Or are you simply reactive? Do you just react? And everybody knows. Now, if someone wants to get power over you, they will know what your trigger is, and they will bring you down. So it's better you know, and you know how to manage it before they have, okay, someone has said, when someone says something about me without knowing the real reason, like who is the person supposed to be a friend of a long time, more than 40 years, like in this situation, you know, I refuse to get vaccinated and I can't do it for health reasons. And that can create, it's a trigger for me. But as a buffer, somebody has said you could just go silent. Somebody said, I just shut my mouth. Now that's quite a really good start, is just zip, don't say anything under the heat of emotion, which is a very good, you know, it's a very good small way of saying you just shut your mouth, which is don't say anything. It's not the time. Don't be hasty. Again, don't be quick in how you respond. Take time to cool down before I speak to the other person with love or with respect, at least. When I'm doing everything on side and it's still, okay, I'm doing my best. I'm really trying to do my best, and they criticize me, and that I'm not, or I get taken, that they just think, oh, she will always do that, or he will always do that, and I can use him or her. So that is really, and somebody else has said, shut up and walk away. So you can't always walk away, but you can walk away in your mind. And I hold my tongue for a moment. I have a coffee or something hot. And I observe in silence and slow down. I observe my own thoughts and my feelings. Observer. The observer is a very, very powerful place to be when you are in this state. So here I can be the observer. I watch myself. I watch myself over here and the impact that this is having on me. And in that observation, I can take the power on how I want to respond or react. If I don't know how, then I keep quiet. I go still. I bring peace into the situation. Sometimes even a sense of humor. It depends your culture. In Australia, humor is often used as a buffer. Keep light. Don't take it too seriously. Just keep light about it. But it's also something that you can think about later. How could I have done this differently in that reaction space here? I can think, how could I have done it differently? But stay light in the moment. As soon as I get heavy and I start defending myself in a reaction, it's going to have It's going to start doing this, impact and react and impact. And that's where the conflict starts. It's bang, 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 bang. And it gets so loud. It gets so loud that we can both end up not even knowing what the conflict was about. We've lost. So it's really important for you to know what your buffer is. Two things: know your trigger and know what you can bring in to protect yourself from always reacting in the same way. Know what your habit is of reacting. My habit has been, my reaction is to want to help. And I'm sure many of you, because you care about this, your first reaction might be, oh, I'll help. It may not be the best thing to help someone in that moment. It might be better to let them find their way. It may not be good for me to feel sad or pity for them, but to have a belief that they will be okay, that they will come through this, that they will get experienced from this. So I can stand back and not rush in to help or not rush in to make it better for them, because I'm taking away the opportunity for them to learn and grow. So differences of opinion we talked about, and I've got to keep an eye on the time here, because differences of opinion can be very much about survival, and different opinions and values can lead to conflict. And the whole thing of, no, you are wrong. Somebody's talked about this vaccination situation. It's global. It's caused, I don't know about where you are, but it has caused great separation in families and in workplaces, in friendships, a lot of things. So the war of the vaccine, you know, versus vax versus non-vax sort of thing. And so this is where, this is a kind of something that I kind of like look at for myself. In peacemaking, there's a beautiful thing that looks at how we create conflict with another, or in global affairs, we create conflict, which is around blame. I'm right and you're wrong. No, you are wrong and I am right. No, you are wrong. And if you did it my way, you would see that this is the best way. No. If you did it my way and did it and saw the benefit in my way, then you would be okay. So this goes back and they fire insult. And this is what can create that conflict escalation that Glassell talks about, going into the abyss. Because if this I am right and you are wrong is left to escalate, it's going to lead to destruction. But here, finding common ground or bridging differences. Now, there's a beautiful organization that goes into war zones where two parties, two people, you know, two organizations are fighting to the point where they want to destroy the other. But there's no victory in war. There's no one wins. Whereas here, it's a win-win. And so if this person in the blue is someone that you are close to, someone that you work with, someone that you love, but you have differences. It could be around that vaccination. It could be around work, how you work. It could be your values. So when you look at this, in this organization I was mentioning, they go into war zones and they see the two, like here, where you are wrong, no, you are wrong, no, I'm right, you're wrong, where it becomes very hot and very violent and ultimately very destructive. So they go in and they try and help both sides. They go in and they try and help both sides. Oh, I'm going back the wrong way. Sorry, this is my PowerPoint skills. Causes me awful in a conflict, you know. And so, if they have to deal with this, what they encourage is the two to find what do they have in common, which is this middle yellow piece. All of us have something in common. It might be just our own need to survive, or our own human wanting happiness or wanting something healthy. Now, if this person in the blue is vaccinated, and this person, let's say, using this as an example, in the brown, refuses to be vaccinated for health reasons, for ethical reasons, for concerns, for conspiracies, whatever is the choice of this person here, the brown person with the black in the middle, as long as we try and convince each other that I am right and you are wrong, we will get nowhere. This could be a teenager on the left. And so the mother might say to the teenager, I want you home no later than 11 o'clock tonight. And if you are not home, then you'll be punished. And the teenager says, I have to come home at 1. The party doesn't finish until 1, and I'm not coming home before it finishes. Don't you speak to me like that. I'm your mother, and I'm telling you, you come home at 11 or she'll be grounded. You will be punished. And the teenager says, I hate you. You are just the worst. So it goes back and forth like we saw here. And so if we can, one of you has to take the position to try and change this. Now, in this case, the teenager is emotional. It's not going to work. We cannot always hope that the other person is going to have a wake-up call and change. So I have to initiate this. So I say, okay, what have we got in common? If this is a vaccination argument, then what we both have in common is that we both want to be safe. We want to come through this pandemic okay. And that is something that we have in common. The blue person is saying, if you are vaccinated, then you will stay safe. You will not get this and you will not die. And the brown person is saying, if I have this, I could die. My health could be affected. And there's no evidence yet that this vaccination isn't going to affect my health permanently. So what do you think is the common ground between them? What is it? What is this yellow area that we both have in common? What do you think? What do you think is this common ground here? What do you both need? What do you both value here? What do you think? Does anyone put anything in here? Both want to be safe. Exactly. Safety. Yeah, health. So this is the common, your health, you both want to be safe. How you go about it can be different, but this is the common ground, and this is the place where you start a conversation together. This is the healing. This is the keeping a healthy relationship. Okay, I want you to be safe. Well, I want to be safe. Okay, so how can we do this? How can you stay safe? Or how can you stay healthy? And then when you hear the other person's point of view, it's like standing in their shoes. When you put yourself in the place of the other person that you are having conflict with, then you can start to find something you have in common, and you can understand where it's coming from, this aggression, this argument, where it's coming from in you rather than what it's doing, where it's coming from in them rather than what it's doing to you. Now, I have lived in my life I remember learning this great lesson when I lived in a house with 7 other women, and there was often conflict and a power struggle, and so it could become very nasty and very aggressive. And I remember one day thinking, I looked at their eyes and I could see fear, I could see panic, and I thought, they're not angry with me. They are just experiencing some form of fear that they are going to lose position, or that they are not valued, And so when I saw that, I was able to step into their shoes. And that gave me the power to bring some peace and calm. And then I could reflect on, I understand. I can see that this is really upsetting you. I'd really like to talk about it with you. And it can immediately, for me, when I've even been in an argument and it's escalating, it's getting hotter. Sometimes when it's in this place here, I've suddenly thought, I don't know what we're fighting about. I don't know what this argument is anymore. It's just that I'm trying to prove I'm right and they're trying to prove they're right. And I'm trying to say, if you see it from my point of view, you would understand. So what I've had to do, I remember one day actually saying to this person, I don't know what we're fighting for anymore. Can we put the pause button on? Can we put the pause button and just try and help me understand what it is this argument is about? And it worked. We both kind of went, oh. I said, help me understand what's the problem. And then when they started to explain to me, I started to understand where they were coming from. And then we found some common ground, a place where we could start to rebuild our relationship. So I just like to, I don't know, how are we going for time, May and Kim? What's the common ground between you? If we've got a couple of minutes, where you can identify, or maybe this is some homework for you. If you can take a screenshot of this, maybe it's too much to ask you now to think about what is the common ground between you and someone you're having a conflict. What do both of you or all of you want or value? So maybe it's a point of reflection for later. But I'd really like you to identify that so that you can build a healthier relationship with someone that's important or a situation that's important. So I'll just briefly touch, because we're running out of time, but communication is the absolute power in healthy, productive, strong and positive relationships, whether they be at work or in the family, whoever my interaction is with, is communication. And most conflict, as I mentioned before, comes from misunderstandings. It comes, yes.
Communication is very important. So you can have another 15 minutes before we have question and answer.
Great. Okay. Okay, great. Because I've touched on a lot of the tools and anyway. Okay, so communication. How do we communicate as human beings? Now, how we communicate is a various toolbox of different ways that we communicate. So how do you think we tend to communicate as humans? Animals do it through smell. They do it through baring their teeth, or they do it through growling, or they communicate, or they wag their tail if it's a dog. Or so we all have our way of communicating, and they understand as a species. They understand. But with humans, what are the main ways that we communicate? So there's listening, but I'd like to really look at the voice and what aspects of the voice can create or calm conflict. Now, the voice is like a musical instrument. And I'm going to give you a demonstration of what a voice, I'm going to use my voice in a particular way in addressing someone else. And I'd like you to think about, how could I have done this differently? because the voice can be a very big trigger in how someone speaks to me, or they don't speak to me. They've stopped talking to me. So the voice is a very, very powerful tool in how we communicate, and we are often unaware of it. Someone said, I just go silent as my buffer. If I don't go silent and I speak words, or I speak in a way that is not appropriate, it's going to have a reaction. So I'm going to do this and just see how you what you think I could do differently. Excuse me? Hello? Look, I told you I was doing a workshop. I was what? I know you have to do this. I know, but can you just wait? We've only got about another 20 minutes. Okay, and then you can do what? Oh, excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Oh, is that right? You don't have to speak to me like that. We've already talked about it. We'd planned and you said, yep, that's okay. Can you just, oh, I don't know. You're just so selfish. You're just selfish. It's really, that's enough. And I don't want to talk about it. No, I don't want to talk about it later. You're just selfish. And you just think about yourself all the time. No, I don't want, just go away. Go away. Okay. It's horrible. It's horrible how we speak to each other sometimes when we are blaming someone else for not fulfilling a promise. So what could I have done differently? What happened there in my voice that was really, or in my attitude that was expressed in my voice? What did I do? What could I have done differently? It wasn't just about my voice. It was that my voice was expressing an attitude to this person. And what did I, so if any of you, so verbal and non-verbal. Okay, so communication is around, so look, body language. But I'd like you to think about how I could have addressed this situation that I had planned before the workshop on how we could work together in this situation. And they've completely ignored me, and they've gone about it in a, so loud. Yes, somebody said you were very loud. So volume, the voice in the volume, and impatient. So impatient, what does impatient mean? Impatient, my voice was showing impatience. It means that I was blaming. It means that I could not work with that person. I was rushing. And I was using very strong words like selfish. That's again a blame. It's an insult. It's disrespectful. It's a selfish, the trigger was my selfishness and their selfishness, rather than perhaps this person has said just talking down, you know, like I was talking down to this person. I was putting them down. But rather than just speaking, we talked a lot before about respect, and respect is really articulated in the voice. And so I won't go into this situation now because you anyway, I'll go back here to the voice. But the voice is crucial in how I attack someone or I bring peace into the room. And I have to know that it's volume, like the shouting. I could have said, hello, yeah, look, I know you need to do this, and I'm really sorry that, but I've got this workshop happening. Would you mind just waiting another 10 minutes, and then you can, is that okay? Is that okay? Look, I'm sorry I apologize. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That's great. Yep, 10 minutes is just, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. I spoke with more respect. I spoke with a softer tone rather than attacking and aggressive, because you can be sure when no one's here, that's going to continue. That will be how dare you speak to me like that? What do you mean? Well, you didn't listen, you that. And then it just builds and builds. So the voice, the tone of voice, the volume, the words I use, the music in my voice, or the aggression will really be a huge trigger. So communication isn't just about talking, it's also about listening. And I need to be able to listen to the other person. It's a beautiful skill to listen. When you are a good friend, or somebody loves working with you, it's usually that you are a good listener. And it's really, really important in supporting conflict management or transformation. I have to be able to put the pause button on in myself and listen. And in a mediation session, it would be an agreement that, okay, who's going to speak first? I'll speak first, not to interrupt. So you come to an agreement. If you are really going to have a conversation about, let's find some middle ground, you can, if you are the initiator, you can say, look, you start, you go first, and I won't interrupt. And then when they have finished, you can make little notes if you want, but when they have finished, you say, okay, I'll share my point of view. And if you cannot interrupt, that would be great. That's why there's often good to have a mediator or a third person there to facilitate a conversation. Facilitated conversations can be very powerful in this way. But if you're not listening, you will miss the point. If you don't show interest by listening, then the other person's needs or their fears or their interests, then they will feel that you are disrespecting them, you are not listening, you're only thinking about yourself, and they will not change their position. So communication is really, I think, if you had to sum up a tool for communication, it would be respect. If you keep the intention in your communication with someone as respectful, you can't go wrong, because you will choose the right words, the right way to say them. When you respect the differences in the other, you respect the differences of the story. We all have different stories. We don't know what someone's background is, unless they're family or they're a friend we know well, but often we do not know their story. And we can take a dislike to them, and we can challenge them verbally. We can challenge them by not listening, because what you're talking about is a load of rubbish. And so I judge, and they feel that, and they will not change their position, and they will draw the conversation to a close by getting up and walking out. So respect, that word respect that I've mentioned so many times in this, but listening is a beautiful art and a very important skill. So if you watch your voice, the tone of your voice, the volume of your voice, the intention behind your words, is it respectful or is it aggressive? Then communication is a huge topic. Having difficult conversations with someone, it is a workshop on its own. And there's some great people out there that I know of that would run a great workshop on communication. But if you wanted to, Kim said it's very important, then we can devote more time to it. And perhaps it should have been right at the very beginning. But active listening, showing that you are listening. So if I'm listening to someone and I'm just silent, I'm listening, I'm not saying anything, I'm silent, but I'm just staring at them. They don't know if I'm listening or not. I might be thinking about what I've got to do when I go home. So active listening is actually what it says. It's just actually acknowledging that I'm listening to you. And and I can even go, okay, I understand. Good. So that is not passive listening, but active listening. And also reflective listening. So you can, these are skills, these are tools that you can use, and you should really do your research on communication if you are wanting to deal with a a conflict. You can really look at listening, active listening, and what's called reflective listening. So help me understand, do you really mean that you don't want me to work here anymore? And they were saying, no, that's not what I was saying at all. Well, can you help me understand what it is that you're saying? Because if I don't do reflective listening, there's going to be a misunderstanding, which, as I said before, creates a conflict, the misunderstanding, because I thought you said, no, that wasn't what I was saying. And why didn't you ask me? Well, I just presumed, I assumed that this is what you were saying about me. Oh no. I mean, it's such a waste of time and a waste of emotion when we don't check in and say, I'm not sure if I've got this right. Can you help me understand what it is you're actually trying to say? And clarify what it is you have heard. Did you say we're leaving at 7 o'clock? No, I said we were leaving at 6. Oh, I thought you said we were leaving at 7. No. Now, if I didn't check in, 6 o'clock comes and I'm not around because I thought it was 7, what's that going to do? It's going to create a conflict. So I have to check in. That's that reflective listening. Or sometimes someone really needs to hear that they have insulted you. So reflective listening can also be, oh, so what you're saying is that you think I'm useless. And they said, well, what makes you think I said you were useless? I didn't say that at all. Or your tone of voice or your attitude to me and what you were saying, no, I wasn't saying that. And so I have to clarify in a non-violent way. There's some wonderful research you can look at on non-violent communication. It's called NVC, and I would rather speak to you about this, but I'm realizing I should have put some of this in the PowerPoint for you, because NVC, non-violent communication, is you can do courses in it, you can read about it, you can practice it to have an attitude and an intention that is not violent towards the other or yourself. And non-violent communication towards yourself is perhaps the hardest. Oh, you idiot. The inner critic. Oh, you're so stupid. Oh, why did I do that? You're an idiot. You are so stupid. I'm a loser. I've failed. Oh, you see, you are no good at that. And the confidence goes because your inner critic is punishing you. And that could be someone's voice from childhood, could be someone's voice from school, could be someone that you loved who said something cruel to you and you believed them. But my inner critic has to be empowered by my self-awareness, my self-knowing, and I can say that is not true. I can say to myself, that is not true. So I really have to be able to listen to my wiser self when I am being confronted by a situation, because that will be my guiding light. Without that, you can do as many courses, you can read as much about conflict, but if you are not connected to yourself, someone said earlier about being out of alignment with myself. If I am not connected to myself, then I will be connecting to other people's opinions. I will become what they think I am. I will become what they say I am. And then I'm living a lie. And that is the greatest conflict of me with myself, with other people. So I have to listen. Listening is not just about listening to other people in a conflict, but it's listening to my inner self. And that's where, for me, contemplation, meditation, walking in nature, being kind to myself, I can ask myself questions and I can listen to my inner wisdom, my inner knowing. So, yes, it's, so, I mean, this question here, what aspects of the voice can create or calm conflict? You can ask yourself this in your, afterwards as as a kind of a self-reflection. What aspects of the voice can I use to create calm? Refer back to the conflict you've already identified. In that situation, what was a communication skill that helped you transform or relieve this conflict with someone? Because you have to learn from your experiences. That's the greatest wisdom. I am still a student of this myself. We are all students in this life, and conflict will be there till the day we leave this earth, you know, we transition on. It will always be there. So we have to be our own teacher. You know, this into the fire and feeling the back of the chair. I remember when I was learning about conflict and knowing when to say something and when not to. It is a very important tool for communication, because we have to know sometimes when we are in a conflict or we are trying to help others in conflict. When do I go into the fire and help or address this? And when do I actually sit back and feel the back of the chair? And I remember working with 2 teams in an organization once, and it was the 2 managers that were really, really fighting each other in a very destructive way. And both teams were suffering. Both teams. They were unproductive. They were negative. They had stopped communicating with each other because each team wanted to support their manager. So I did this workshop with them on how to relieve this conflict that was between them all. And I remember at one stage, the 2 managers were sitting in this chair and the teams were around, and they started arguing and accusing and fighting. And the team was looking at me going, you've got to stop this. You've got to stop it. Come on, you know, what, you can't let them speak like this. You can't let them fight. And I thought, no, this, and it's really an art, but I just knew that they needed to get stuff out before it could start to heal. I had to have such courage. I can't tell you the courage I needed to feel the back of the chair, because the natural instinct is to want to go in and hose it down, put the fire out, say, oh, we're all friends, everything is okay. And they would not have learned, and they would not have said and got stuff off there out of. So I sat back and I went, I reassured the teams, it's okay, let them go. It's going to be okay. It got very hot and it got but they were in this zone with just the 2 of them. We had all disappeared. And so gradually you can be sure, if you have the courage to wait, it will calm down. Someone will stop having a tantrum. They will stop the panic that they are feeling when they are trying to express their pain. Sometimes you just have to bring peace into the room, hold them in a vibration of peace, hold them in a vibration of trust, and know that they were, and it was magic. At the end of this, the 2 of them were sort of exhausted, and then they said, okay, thank you for saying that. Okay, well, thank you, you know, so what are we going to do about it? And then we could start a conversation to construct and reconstruct the way we work together. It was really, really important. And this into the fire. And then sometimes we go into situations and it was the wrong thing to do. As someone said before, sometimes it's walking away, but not necessarily physical, because that can create a bigger insult. But we feel the back of the chair, we sit back and we let them work it through. But it takes practice. So do not curse the darkness, light a light. So when people are really in that very dark place of being, you don't just, you know, focus on the darkness, but you focus on bringing a light in some way. And that might be initially just through your hope for this, your intention, your belief that they can come through, or I will come through. It's like me cursing the darkness when it comes into me. And we all have our dark times where we get a bit lost in the dark. but find something's a way to light a light, a small, even a light. But the darkness also needs to be respected, and it takes courage. But my intention is to find the light and find a way to light that light. I love this whole, I'll just start finishing up soon, but I love this whole notion of alchemy, that we can turn conflict into something healthy and positive. It's like alchemy is about turning iron into gold by just changing the components of matter or of vibration. Conflict can be converted into something healthier and more positive. So how? Through vibration, a change of frequency, changing our attitude towards the other person, towards myself, towards the situation. Get a different perspective, get a different way of looking at it. Sometimes that takes an enormous creative mind to see something in a different way to what I always imagined. And I've got, examples of that even in my work, when someone said, no, that is not, no, you've got it wrong. And they were convinced. So I went home one night and I sat up nearly all night looking at this situation, this product, which in my case was a part I was playing in a play. The director had come from Italy. He was a commedia dell'arte expert, and he knew the traditional classic way that I should be interpreting this character. And I hated him. I used to think, oh, I don't want to go into the rehearsal room with you because you just keep going, no, Christina, no. And I went, no, why? Tell me why, no. And because he didn't speak English, he couldn't tell me. So I went home this night and I sat with the paper, with my script, and I thought, I am not going into work tomorrow until I understand what it is he's trying to tell me, to change my perspective, change the way So all of a sudden, halfway through the night, I went, that's what he sees. That's what he's talking about. And I did a 360-degree interpretation of how I was going to represent. I went in the next day and I did it completely differently. And he went, Christina, bellissimo. And we became very, very close. There was this wonderful respect because he knew I had made the effort to try and change my attitude, change my thinking, and it shifted the energy. So change your attitude, try and find a way to change the way you think about it. Look at a different perspective, ask other people's perspective on this, people you trust, and that shifts the energy, and then we create a different dynamic. So we've done that. Okay, so war to wisdom is the positivity in conflict. We go from war and we build wisdom. And we build it through knowing yourself, your tendencies, your triggers. Is there something bad in you that's creating this? What is my responsibility here? Use your buffer, whether it's going silent, whether it's bringing in wisdom, whether it's bringing in a bit of lightness, whether it's looking at it in a different way. It's thinking about some influential person I respect. Try not to react in that moment and see where it's coming from in them rather than what it's doing to me. These are some of the skills that we can practice. And diffuse yourself before you attempt to diffuse others. So this is like if there's a bomb, I have to manage myself before I try and diffuse the bomb. Try not to take what the other person says or does personally. You need self-awareness. Know how you react to stress. Know what your triggers are, what presses your button. This is all around personal empowerment, self-awareness. Self-aware, observe yourself, be your greatest teacher. Learn about yourself and your reactions from yourself. Experience is the greatest teacher. You can't learn tennis by reading about it. You can learn tips, but you have to get out and you have to practice and practice and practice and learn by experience. Learn how to manage conflict and yourself in conflict. It comes with experience. I can't stress it enough. So these are some, take a screenshot. These are some of the tools besides the ones I've already mentioned. Go out and learn. Learn by doing, do courses, but there's nothing like experience. Be aware there's conflict with this person's situation, and what am I going to do about it? I have to lead. No longer hurting anyone or being hurt. This is something I live my life by. I try not to hurt anyone, and I try not to let them hurt me. And from that, I make decisions and choices. So put your pause button on, use your buffer, and do a regular self-audit. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be reactive. If you're tired, sleep deprived, you are naturally going to be a bit aggressive, a bit short. You will insult people because you're just not. Are you eating properly? Are you eating healthy, nourishing food? So am I, healthy, nourishing? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I being active? Am I just sitting too much? I'm not getting out into nature. I'm not having any fun time. I'm not doing anything that I love, whether it's painting or it's music or I don't get time. I don't relax much anymore because everything is so busy. I'm in so much demand. What are my triggers? That's the self-awareness. Where am I vulnerable? And so these are some of the tools that you need to check in with and see, is there anything here that I'm neglecting in myself? Because you can be sure if you are neglecting yourself, you will neglect others. You have to take responsibility for yourself before you can change anything. And these, look, I could have put a whole list of suggested reading, but the internet is full of it. But there's one small book by this wonderful man called Jean-Paul Lederac. He is a great peacemaker in the world. He knows people, he knows conflict, he knows what peace is. He was a priest in the Catholic religion at one stage, and he stepped away to become a negotiator with conflict and war. And there's this little tiny book that it's kind of like a very powerful little summary called The Little Book of Conflict Transformation. It's about, I think, $6 with Kindle and probably $8 to buy. It's really, really worth, of all the books you can read. I had an email the other day from someone saying, can you recommend some books I can read on? I said, just get this. It's just too overwhelming otherwise. Michelle LeBaron was also a teacher of mine in my course. She's from Canada, and she writes beautifully about the human condition, like bridging troubled waters. She writes about intercultural conflict. She's probably a little bit more on the academic side, but she's still worth reading because she writes beautifully. So anything that she has written, she's just wonderful. So I wouldn't get too complicated in suggested reading because there's so much on the internet. Anything that you are wondering about, be it communication, whether it be difficult conversations, whether it be inner conflict, whether it be anger management, any of those things, there's so much. But I do believe this little book of conflict transformation is a great tool. It's a little yellow book, and you can carry it in your bag. You can carry it in your pocket if you need. So I think perhaps I've taken up more oxygen than was planned, but it's hard for me because I love this topic so much, and it's really hard to put it all into especially with PowerPoint. I find it a bit, whereas if we were in the room together, we would be more interactive. But so thank you for bearing with me and for your patience and your goodness.
Thank you, Sister Chrissy. Before we end this session, we would like to take something more from you. That is, like before we come into any conflict, whether in my own thoughts or with other people, whether if I could have some kind of thoughts in a form of awareness that before I deal with them, I create these thoughts first and then go into that kind of communication.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of you. Bring peace into the room wherever you are. Because my original, my inner ancient self is naturally peaceful. It wants peace. It wants love. We all want love and we all want peace. So I calm myself when I feel the fire igniting, when the panic can start in the center of my being. And I connect by taking a breath, calming my breathing. From the breath of panic, it becomes the breath of calm. Take a big sigh, big breath that allows me to release some tension that I hold around this situation. Breath is my greatest friend to bring me clarity, to bring me calm. I see a conflict coming because I have become much more aware that it can possibly happen. I have seen the warning signs. I have seen the changes that guide me to understand that something is going to happen. But I've done the work on myself. I have come to know where I'm vulnerable, what I need in order to become stronger and more solid in the face of difference, in the face of challenges around my values. I have empowered myself through self-study, through self-observation, through calming my inner critic and befriending my wiser, ancient, all-knowing self, the part of me that knows what is best for me and what I can do to manage my immature, underdeveloped part. I become the wise one that can guide my vulnerable part of myself into strength, into wisdom, by being the observer, by watching, sitting back in myself, in the company of my wise, all-knowing self, where I have a conversation. What is the best way to help, to heal, to calm this situation? I have written about it in the mornings. I have shared the darkness that I carry, the hard, confusing, the parts of myself that I don't understand. I have written about it in the mornings. I have observed it. I have come to understand where it is coming from. And I know how to manage it because it is familiar to me. It's not taking me by surprise anymore. I know how to look after myself. I have been walking in nature more. I have been sitting in meditation or contemplation more often. I have put the pause button on when I feel a panic come up inside me. I can put the pause button when I don't understand a situation and it is escalating. I put the pause button on and I say to my wise self, what is the best possible action I can do here? Is it to do nothing? Is it to say something? Is it to inquire? But whatever it is I do, I know that at the very, very center of this storm, this tornado, is this calm place in me that holds an intention to bring peace, to bring love, to heal, to bring a form of unity or harmony, either with myself or with the other. And if they do not want this outcome, if they do not want to venture into a place of connectedness and peace, then I know how to take care of myself and say, I wish you well, but it's time for me to move on because I have to take care of myself first. And it's really important to me that I respect and honor and listen to my own needs in order to listen to, respect, and honor your needs. I will always look to see what is our common ground, the neutral place where we can both meet and find a way to be together and agree to disagree, to honor and respect our differences because we have something in common: to stay safe, to stay healthy, to be loved, to feel secure, to be respected. Things we have in common. I honor that in myself. I honor that in you. I hold that hope for myself. I hold that hope for humanity.
Thank you, Sister Chrissy, for giving us so much this today, and your experiences, your stories, the tools and practices that we can use. And I hope that all of us will put them into good use. Yeah. And by the way, for all the audience, this session is recorded and it will be available in a YouTube in a few days' time after we have edited it, okay, for those who would like to go back and reflect more. And if any one of you are interested in a meditation that Sister Chrissy talks about, you can go to the website learningmeditationonline.com. And also, Sister Chrissy has also some meditative music and commentaries on the sacred world music. Yeah. So for our next coming event, which is actually on the May of 14, as we do this session every month. So on the May 14, we will have another speaker with us on, as Sister Chrissy talks about, no expectation. So this speaker will be speaking on finishing expectation. Yeah? And if you have any questions, you can always send it to us or request. Yeah, and and give us your contact so that we can also update you on any other further talks that we have. Okay, yes, learn meditation online, and I would suggest that you try to give it a try, because it's really helpful. And it's like what Chrissy talked about a lot is like be in touch with yourself, aligning with yourself, listening to your inner voice. Yeah, then you find that your inner wisdom will come out. Yeah. Okay, so we shall end for now. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for your wonderful comments also. I've been reading the chat room, so thank you for your wonderful comments that you shared. Thank you.
So could we just have everybody on your video on, just to wave our hands so that we are connected?
It's so beautiful to see all your lovely faces. You are the hope. You are the ones that will bring peace into this world. Starts with one small drop and the world will change. Your circle of influence.